Welcome, welcome. I'm really excited about this week's conversation, particularly because it's with somebody that I have a really wonderful relationship with in the publishing industry. And I know for those of you who are working on your books or looking for people to partner with, sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming when you get into the industry and realize how many people you have to partner with to make your book a reality. So I hope that today's conversation will give you some confidence. You'll learn a little bit about the publishing industry, whether you are on book one, your first book, or you're working on book two, three, or beyond. We'll also touch on AI and some of our expertise in ethical posturing toward AI, as so many things are changing in this industry. So let me introduce you to this week's guest. Welcome to Beyond Better, a podcast that explores a simple but profound idea. We all deserve to live lives we love, and that includes our work lives too. I'm your host, Stacey Ennis, an author, book coach, speaker, and long-time location-independent entrepreneur living in Portugal with my family of 4. Join me as I talk business, location independence, writing, publishing, and so much more, all focused on building a life that is beyond better. Leslie, also known as Lamb Miller, is the co-founder and CEO of Girl Friday Productions, an independently owned, women-led publishing services company delighting authors and brands since 2006. Renowned for strong client relationships, expert editorial, and award-winning design, GFP produces thoughtful, well-crafted books across genres, employing effective book positioning with tailored reader marketing strategies for each client. GFP is proud to support authors who educate, entertain, and change lives. Lamb, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. What a delight.
I know all of us in this industry have an origin story, and I would love to hear yours. What led you into the work that you do today, supporting authors?
Now, I've been thinking about this a lot because Girl Friday turns 20 this year, and
So
it's
cool.
interesting. Thank you. It is cool thinking back to the humble beginnings when it was my work wife / co-founder, Ingrid Emmerich, and I both worked at a traditional publisher. She was the editorial director. I was the senior editor, and we both worked in acquisitions, actively edited. We had lists to build and put out. And it was before remote work really happened. This was 20 years ago, but we had just been acquired by a larger company. Very common story in publishing. So it was just the two of us out here at an outpost in Seattle, and everyone else was in New York. And we were in our early 30s, and guess what we were doing? We were having kids. And it was my first and Ingrid's second. We were actually pregnant at the exact same time. We gave birth 3 days apart.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yes. We were really pregnant at the exact same time. And following a very brief family leave time, we went back to work, and we were really struggling. And we, by day I was acquiring books on, the false fight between stay-at-home mothers and working mothers, while facing sort of really the same questions, even though I was working at a feminist press. I was facing all of those questions and dilemmas, and a fair lack of support in the workplace. It just didn't exist. And we asked to have reduced hours, and they reduced our hours on paper and reduced our pay, but nothing else changed. And I don't know if people know the glamour of being an acquisitions editor is that you do all of your work by day, and at night you're supposed to read all the manuscripts that and so the work is ongoing, and you're sort of expected to do it in these off hours. And if you have a baby that also is up all night, or anything else you want to do, those are in conflict. And after a while, we couldn't do it anymore and said, there has to be a better way. We know that we can do our work and be mothers and do all of these other things if we had the right support if the values were in place that really let us prioritize and manage our own time. And so we created our own company with those values at the center and with a vow that it wouldn't just be for us. We'd never wanted anyone to have to go through this sort of false choice again.
I am sure that so many listeners and viewers can really understand that. And I was thinking about my own experience with my babies. And, at the time I had my own business, but I went back after 3 weeks. And I
Yeah.
remember coming home from the hospital, I think it was like 2 days after, and, baby on my chest, typing on my laptop, trying to finish the project because he came early. And
Yeah.
that balance is really tough. And I think also in one of the things I say to my husband a lot is like, I cannot ever be clicked out. Like I have to always be
Yeah.
clicked in.
Yeah.
Like this type of work, your brain has to be firing to be
Yeah.
good at it.
Yeah.
You can't skate by. So I imagine for you at that time, it was especially tough because you're also, and then there's like, you want to still kind of prove that you're still fully there for your job. So I'm sure there was like a lot of tension going on for you at that time.
Absolutely. And the tension doesn't go away. I mean, you're still going to have this sort of, firing on all cylinders job. As you say, it's very creative, it's very intellectual. Then becoming an entrepreneur as well, then you're a business owner. You're wearing every single hat, you're doing all of the things as well as being a parent. But I think when you take away the judgment and sort of the let's not talk about the reality. I mean, in the United States, we're still there. Every single new parent has to, you can't afford childcare. You have to, I went back after a month too, and I was like, this is insane. This is insane. I feel crazy. I'm like brushing crumbs off my kid's head and breastfeeding him it was the exact same thing. And women still have to do it. But I think the difference that we wanted to make is that one of my employees said to me, she used to work at a large corporation and came over, and she said, the amount of energy that I used to expend in not being me at work that I get to put toward my work here is incredible. She was like, not having to mask and change who I am when I walk through the door, but being valued for who I am and being able to talk about all of these aspects of my life. It was life changing for her. And it was life changing for us, just not to have that judgment and to have accommodation. It doesn't make it easier all the time, but it changes how you feel about it.
Yeah, to, not only build it for yourself, but then build it for your team. And then, inevitably that then trickles down to clients and success of the business as a whole. And I think one of the things that our teams share, and you and I and our teams have met many times together.
Yes.
I think we have a lot of similar culture in our businesses. While, of course, ultimately excellence on the end is the most important thing, I actually think that the team being happy and well supported and joyful in their work is the absolute most important thing, because you can't deliver excellence on the other side if, and it's, of course, I'm not perfect at this. None of us are, but at least aspiring to build that space and doing your best to create a space where people can be autonomous and, and like pursue their interests and build the business and show up. I think that's something that your team does extraordinarily well. I'm curious, as you think about your services and the work that you do with authors, how do you see your team culture impacting the books that you put out in the world as a publisher?
No, I'm really glad you brought that up. And I do think it's this affinity that you and I have, because you can spot it, you can feel it when I talk to anyone on your team, not just you, sort of this warmth and joy and enthusiasm comes through. And of course, you can imagine how much better work people do when that's their, mind space coming in. But I think that, starting from the beginning, and we know from taking people through to the end of publishing publishing is such a vulnerable act. It doesn't matter what you're writing about, whether this is a memoir or these are your business principles or it's fiction. This is something that is so personal to you, and ultimately your goal is to show it to the world. And it terrifies people. They don't usually recognize that. And sometimes they ask tons of questions. Sometimes they want to stop and like take a long, but all of it is this dealing with this intimacy and vulnerability that they're about to show themselves to strangers and really ask them to like and appreciate their work. And so this kind of empathy and saying this can be joyful. It should be joyful. It shouldn't be scary. It shouldn't be punitive. This should be the most magnificent creative collaboration that brings you through to, these fantastic interactions that you're going to have with your readers. And we really believe and embody that's how it should be. We are amazing at what we do. You are amazing at what you do. And we're also people, and we're fun and authentic and have curiosity and joy. And why would you not want to have this journey be that way if you could make that choice instead of another way? That sometimes that's how it goes.
I think the fun piece is such a fun, fun piece of it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that, I've talked about this a little in the podcast in the past, but, when I was younger, I was so afraid of being too silly or too whatever, because I thought I wouldn't be professional enough. And I think now that I'm older, I'm really established. I'm like, where can I have fun? Where can I infuse sparkle and joy and silliness? But of course, with excellence, with professionalism, with follow through, all those things too. But like I have a jacket, like a sequin jacket that I wear when people finish their drafts now, to our calls. And
love it.
like, why not have things like that in the journey? Because it doesn't have to be like suffering, pain, and dismay. It can be fun and exciting.
No, absolutely. And I think that unfortunately you and I know that when we get to be silly as women, oftentimes we aren't given as many chances as men to be called professional at the same time. That is the great thing about reaching middle age, is I also do not care. Here I am, world. But when I listen in on some of the calls that folks are having with clients or talking to them myself, that's what they're sharing. Is someone the other day opened up with a poem that she had just written about Renee Good, and they were both crying on the phone. Someone, shares that they are having a baby, or that they're personal, they want this joy too. And so I think that they're hungry for it and they match it. And then you have like this true collaborative relationship in sort of, in excellence, as you said, but in joy. It's special.
I love that. Yeah. And I think there's also, we're kind of taught that we have to have this like only a professional relationship with people, and you can't really blur those lines. I've had way more fun when I've blurred those lines a bit. I know about their life, they know about my life. Yeah. Happy birthday. Did you have a great, it's like those things. I don't know why we have to be so like not human in our relationships, professional or otherwise. So I love that you brought that up. One of the things that I think authors get really overwhelmed with, I know authors get really overwhelmed with, is when they jump into this industry, they feel really just like kind of at sea. There's a lot of different people who've all kind of made up how they work. There's not really like one set industry deliverable standard that they can go and compare apples to apples. They get ghosted, they get burned, they get bad work. I just spoke with somebody recently who was like ready to sign with a couple twice with people, and they just were gone. Like they just disappeared.
Yeah.
And I feel so much for them, because I remember when I've been in earlier stages of my business and trying to hire like an ads person or marketing support. Now we have the amazing Rita. So I don't have to go through that pain anymore. But, going through those experiences, getting burned, not being sure that you're spending your money wisely. A lot of times when people come to me, it's not so much the actual investment, it's more that they just don't want to be taken advantage of. They want to make sure that they're getting their value from it, and that they're not they're not going to like pay for something and not get something on the other side, which makes complete sense. I
Mm-hmm.
wondered if you could give listeners some advice on this as they are selecting partners, moving between different stages from maybe one partner to another partner. How do you make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you're working with somebody who's legit?
Sure. No, it's a great question. And it makes me so sad too when we talk to folks who have been burned, who worked with someone who didn't understand them, who took their money and ran, who it doesn't it's hard when we're in this position. It's so unfathomable to us, but I know that's the reality, that there are some bad actors out there, and that it's a it is a very weird industry. It's sort of it's sort
It's
of
weird.
it's sort
Yeah.
of mystifying. It has an odd business model, and it's shifted a lot in the last few decades. And so it's completely understandable that people are a bit at sea, especially if they're new to it. But I think one of the best things you can do is, if you've found someone who you trust and shares their values, is talk to them. It's just like in any business. If you can get a referral from someone that you love and trust and who understands what your end goals are, um, I mean, you're halfway there. I think it's fantastic now. It's easier, I think, with social media, with the web, with the amount of um, material that we put out there. It's easier to investigate and research and actually do your due diligence about companies. There are some great advocacy organizations like Ally who actually rate people and give them a green or a yellow or a red, and they say why, and they're independently assessing companies and saying who they should work with. But mostly it's about asking the right questions and being able to, just like the first time when we spoke about certain things, but when you have a conversation with someone and you ask about their culture, ask about what is important to them about the process. See if they listen to you about what your goals are. I mean, we talked to someone the other day who said, I talked to someone else, they just kept talking to me about being in airport bookstores. That isn't what I want. What I want is this. And we were just listening to her and saying, your goals are our goals. I'm not going to try and persuade you um, for this other dream. And there is, I think, also questioning the assumptions of what we've been fed about. I've already demystified the romance of being an acquisitions editor, but there is no best way. And so really it's finding someone who will honor you by allowing you to take your own publishing path from writing through, and then finding the right partners to go with you on your journey.
Mm, that's a wonderful, wonderful advice. And I was also thinking that, sometimes it's really hard for people to compare pricing.
Mm-hmm.
You get maybe a quote from one person and then another person that's like 4x maybe what this person is charging. And that can be really tricky for people to determine, because it's like, well, why would I pay 4 times the amount when this
Mm-hmm.
person seems just as good and I could just do this? What would you tell people when they're kind of dealing with that? Because I come across this all the time, especially with my coaching. People will come in, we have a conversation and they're like, well, I met somebody and they're way less expensive than you. And I'm like,
Sure.
great. Sometimes you just have a budget and that's all you have to work with. But if you have the budget and you want to be mindful in how you're spending, how should people be thinking about these vast differences sometimes in the
Mm-hmm.
quotes that they're getting?
You should definitely be taking people's experience into account, someone who has been doing this as long as you have, who has this long track record, how much time are they spending? How robust is the experience that they're going to get? We have folks who come to us who say they give us this quote, and we say that quote doesn't include any editorial production. You will need that, and you're maybe going to pay for that separately because you do need it. And so they've lowered their prices sort of artificially. Um, this is not a process where you want to cut corners. And it is absolutely fair to say, I have this much money to spend and I don't have more than that. Um, but for us, I know that, when people say, big ticket item, or like, it is a big ticket item. We're going to have 10 people working with you on your book for 9 months. These are skilled, vetted editors, designers, the best of the best. We're going to curate them and spend an incredible amount of time with you, getting you to your goals. And it's a very personalized experience. And so I think the apples to apples is huge. You really need to ask a lot of questions. It's not like buying a car at that car lot versus this car lot. If it's $5,000 less, sure, buy the car over there. It's not that experience. It's more like a contractor, and what are they going to do for you, and what is the full breadth of what they're going to save you from, or how much attention, in your case, how much attention, care, and how much are you going to instruct them and pass on these skills so that they actually can write a book at the end. I mean,
Yeah.
that's incredible, and that's very different than someone giving you a few notes on the narrative structure of,
Yes.
of your book. Those are really, really different outcomes. Yeah.
I mean, to your point, it's like well, not every, but I would say there's certain people in our industry that have a specific specialty, a niche, an area of focus, and expertise that makes them stand out. It makes them the higher end partners to work with.
Yes.
And just like anything, like buying a car, even like the surgeon that you get at the hospital,
Yeah.
it actually does vary for a reason typically.
Yes.
And I was also
Absolutely.
thinking, I bet you've had this happen too, that I've had people who come to me, go a different route. A year later, they will come back. And I'm
Love that.
always like, oh, just heartbroken for them, because now it's not only costing a lot more, but it's not just money, is it? It's
No.
actually, for a lot of the people that we're working with, it's their time, it's their energy. They want to do it right. They want to shortcut a lot of the process so that they're not having to learn through mistakes. Yeah. Do you have that happen too, that people will come to you after working with another publisher?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we have folks who have gone, and traditional publishing is always the holy grail, who then come back and say, this is not a universal experience. I am not trashing traditional publishers. But I was a small fish on this big list, which is just true. They didn't give me marketing support. I didn't know what to do. I didn't get a proper edit. They put me into copy edit. They're facing a lot of pressure over there to make their P&Ls work. And so, they got what they thought was the prize, but they were like, the prize for me actually is this amazing experience, and I want to come back and have that again. So it is sad. We're always glad to have them back.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it is true, because it wounds them, and then it's hard to, anyone who's been wounded, they're slow to build trust again. We can
That's
do it,
true.
but it's hard.
Yeah. Mm. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about AI.
Yes.
Because of course this is having such a huge impact on our industry. And I know we've talked about this offline, but or online, not on the pod. I've had so many authors come that have done some of their initial ideation with ChatGPT. They've uploaded like all of their content to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, they've outsourced their thinking at the very beginning of the process, which is to me just absolutely the opposite of what you should be doing in the creative
Mm,
process. You never want to outsource your thinking. You don't want to outsource generation and reasoning. Like you don't want to outsource any of that at any stage of your life, but certainly in the
yeah.
book writing process. There's a lot of things that I'm navigating right now in my own work with authors.
Hmm.
One of the lines in the sand that I've drawn with my coaching clients is that I will not work with AI generated content. So
Hmm.
I do require my authors to actually write their books. And I
Yes.
feel a really strong ethical responsibility to hold that space. I know we've even talked about like there needs to be some kind of badge or
Yeah.
like a label or something that's like these
Yeah.
are written by real humans. What are you seeing? How has first of all, how has your inbox changed and your conversations changed? And what
Hmm.
are some of the things that you're like navigating as a publisher right now with AI?
I mean, many of the same. I was recently at an industry conference, and half of the conversations were about AI. And these were folks who were doing writing. And the conversation sort of landed on don't use it to write, use it to help with research, which you then have to verify because there are a lot of hallucinations in the research.
Yes.
Um, that there were folks who spent a lot of time training the AI and said you got better outcomes, sort of the more when you said, that study doesn't exist. And then um, that it apologizes and then, gives you a different, maybe real study as an answer. Anyway, the research is a bit fraught, I would say, although definitely speeds things up. People don't understand that when they upload their content, they are giving it to the world. They're giving it to the corporation to train their machine. And I think what people really don't understand is that there's not a being on the other side that is helping you ideate. What it's doing is combing through and finding pattern matching and giving you back what it thinks you would like and would be most useful. And AI is here. It is not, in the last 2 months, the amount that we have had to deal with it tenfold.
Hmm.
Everything from folks who are saying, here's the cover I want. We have cover designers lined up. We know everything about the genre of the book and what sells and how it should look in the marketplace and how the packaging and positioning is really important. And they're like, but I had this idea and I fed it in and it gave me a design that it stole sort of from some other designer. So there's of course the plagiarism question, which is
Mhm.
difficult. There
Yes.
is the intellectual property question, which is difficult. I am an author I have 3 books that are listed in the Anthropic settlement about being used to train AI without my permission. We have to slow down. I think it is absolutely our obligation as a culture, to slow down and think critically about it. We have this shiny new toy and people are just going nuts with it without thinking really through the ramifications. Um, and why do you think that what it's giving back to you is better than what
I think it's easier. I think that's what it is
yeah,
it's the shortcut, you know, rather than struggling through the ideation. And I think one thing that I'm hopeful about, Liam, is that our clients, the ones that we are guiding and shepherding into creating these amazing books, people that put in the work and the thinking and the artistry and the attention and the human creativity, their books are going to be in demand, I believe, compared to this
absolutely. Absolutely.
homogenous blob of sameness that is coming out of so many people. Yeah. And the other thing is like, it's interesting because I'm working on a book right now, and part of my process is working through comp titles for this book that I'm working on. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's just comparative analysis or competitive analysis of other books that your book could kind of fit with, but adds to the conversation. And in theory, I could plug in my book and say, "Give me comp titles." But I have chosen to put hours of time into going through this and working through this. And that process has given me so much richness that has added to my book. Ideas, points, I'm like making all these connections. And that's where thought leadership comes from, is through leading through thought and putting in the work and struggling through it and thinking about it. It's that I think our clients, the people in our, that are like them doing this kind of work, they're going to rise way above.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think that working with someone like you guys at the beginning and giving them the confidence to do that they can do that their ideas themselves are worthy and better. We do the same thing with comp analysis. I mean, I've been approached by many people, do all of your marketing just with AI, get rid of all of your marketing people, do all of your editorial, that's not.
Oh, that hurts.
No, someone at the conference said, don't write your book with AI, just use it for developmental editing.
No, don't do that.
And I vocalized in opposition at my table. What? No. I mean, it's spell check can catch errors. We're not talking about the same process or output or what's going into it. But the other part that made me sad is not only this thought leadership and the richness of going through that intellectual exercise, but also even when they were talking about, when I'm looking for phrasing, or Jane Friedman has said, I use it to generate headlines for articles. I hate writing headlines. And so I use it for that. And it was interesting when the writers were all talking about, I feed it in when I'm really puzzling over something. To me, that's the richest part of writing. That's when you get through that. It's like you're trying to do the New York Times crossword. And I do this a lot and I can't get the clue and I think about it. I could go look it up and fill it in. But when I've puzzled through and then I'm like, yes, and I get it and it falls into place, to me, that's how it feels in writing when I'm stuck. Being stuck, there's a lesson I'm supposed to learn. And I'm not going to learn the lesson if I take this other path and allow someone else to solve it for me. So I agree with you. It's richer material because it's hard fought. And I'm not a Luddite. I'm not saying it's here. It's going to happen. Yeah. It pops up on my computer every day. We need to figure out how we have an industry standard. Right now, I think the best thing is for people to be very open about their use.
Yes, I agree.
We ask that of our clients. It's part of our contract. We have some contractors who will not work on a manuscript that has been generated with AI. Designers, of course, are very touchy about that for obvious reasons. And now we've seen there was just this case where there was a book that was nominated for a prize and they eliminated it because the cover design, which I didn't find particularly compelling, had been done with AI. And so, as an industry, we're reacting in these sort of disparate ways, but we do need to keep having this conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to be like a fuddy-duddy that's like, oh, the technology is coming in and, but at the same time, I don't see a difference between AI generation and plagiarism in the vast majority of cases because, especially in the stage that I work in and And I would say also, particularly because of the kind of books that I work with, these are
Hmm.
people that like the journey matters to them and to me.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and then of course that you're pulling from other people's work to generate this. So how can that
Right.
not be plagiarism? And then I think, the other piece that authors don't think about, to your point, when you're feeding it out into the ecosystem, you lose the rights to your work because you've now fed it into the ecosystem. So I haven't verified this, but I heard a story from a publishing professional about somebody who, like a publisher wouldn't work with them because they had fed their manuscript into Chat or Claude or something,
Hmm. Uh-huh.
and it didn't pass the AI check later on because it was
Right.
now in the ecosystem. So these are all things that also authors need to be protecting themselves in their own work and thinking about that. I'm also curious to know, just as a business owner, how are you thinking about this in your own work? Like one of the ways that I'm one thing I'm noticing that's really interesting is that people are talking to ChatGPT about me, and whether they should work with me. It's
Yes.
like
Yes.
a vetting tool, and I'm
I
like,
know.
"Ooh, that's." I mean, I'm sure it's saying nice things, but it just makes me a little uncomfortable. Have you had that happen too?
It's interesting. We have been, since we monitor how clients find us and their path to us, and ChatGPT has been ticking up. So right now, ChatGPT seems to think favorably of Girl Friday. But at what point does it not? And uh, there was an interesting tool that was as part of our website checker, and it allowed us to ask a question that a potential client might ask and see what companies came up
Hmm.
in response. I had never heard of a one of them, and it was fat, and I was curious. I mean, there's some reason they mined something um, to serve up these companies to me, and so yes, clients are using this and really trusting what the output is. They're also it AI gives false information all the time. It also is rooted in a certain time and place. Certain things for us, working with uploading a manuscript and how that displays in online retailers, it changes every day. It changes every 5 minutes. We have to stay on top of it constantly. And now all of our clients are saying, well, you told me this. I fed it into ChatGPT. Chat said this. So shouldn't we do this instead? Um, and so I know that I understand, I guess, the appeal, but it is really difficult navigating please trust us. Please trust us that we're on top of it. We know more than chat does about
Yeah,
this. They're not giving a magic answer
there's no
um,
discernment. I mean,
there's
it's
no discernment. There's no discernment. And it's hard. Our publishing managers have said, oh, it's taking twice the time to sort of have to re-educate after a different answer has been given by some AI. And it's a little frustrating. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure it's just going to be an evolving conversation that's like sometimes a little stressful. So I think that's a good segue into your forthcoming book that's coming out in April because has cocktail recipes, which is a nice balance to stress. But it's not just recipes. Can you tell us about your book and also its activism angle?
Yes. So it's called When They Go Low, We Go Highball. 50 cocktails to fight the patriarchy. Um, we have a very specific culture at Girl Friday and a very specific set of values. We're also 18 women, two lovely feminist men. It just happens to work out that way. We're open to all men working at Girl Fridays, but that just happens to be the balance there. Um, it's a difficult time for us and for our team in terms of what has happened since last January, politically, um, socially, culturally in the United States around women's rights and conversation around gender and gender ideology, DEI, etc. Really rageful, really sad. It's difficult to just every day. It was just, this onslaught of news stories. And so the team actually came up with this idea. We're publishers. We love creating our own content. We're unusual in that way. We've created our own content various times and published books on our own. And that's one we felt really passionate about. And so the idea was the team's, and then it was handed over to me to execute. And
Go righteous.
yeah, I have a day job, but I squeezed this one in. And so it is, all of the recipes they really, each one highlights some aspect of feminism or gender equity that we felt was in peril or worth mentioning. And there are role models in there. There are ways to get involved. So it's not just, it went from a rage drinking focus to really focus on power and community and how do we band together to claw these rights back. And it's very fun. It's very tongue in cheek. The drinks are all excellent, I will say. I have personally either created or tested all of them. And it's just nice. It's been this really a galvanizing project for our company, and I hope it feels that way for the women and men who buy it and gift it and celebrate the power of women.
Yeah, I got a sneak peek and it's a beautiful little book. It's so pretty. And I know you include mocktails in there too. So it's inclusive as well in that way.
It is inclusive. Yes. The mocktails are tasty.
Well, we can't wait to celebrate the release in April. Is there already a website up about it, or is there how would our viewers and listeners learn more and be notified when it's released?
Well, you could pre-order it now on your favorite online retailers. So go ahead and do that if you'd like. But the website is being developed as we speak. It will be wegohighball.com. So you can go there, or you can always go to girlfridayproductions.com, and we will continue to give updates because we're very excited.
Nice. And is that a Michelle Obama nod with the
It is indeed a Michelle Obama nod.
I love it. That's great. Oh, we've had such a rich conversation today, and I would love to kind of synthesize this in, anybody who's listening to this. Again, they might be working on their first book. Maybe they had a mediocre experience with their first book and now they're working with their second, and they really want to have that incredible experience. What advice would you give to anyone listening or watching as they're considering the right publishing pathway for their book?
I really want people to try and put to the side the notions about what is best, the most validating, what's going to sound the best to their neighbor, their idea of what being a published author is. I want them to really focus on what are their goals, who do they want to work with, and how do they want to get there. Because the fact of the matter is, whether you go with traditional or hybrid or self-publishing, you can end up with a gorgeous book no matter what. You can end up with a book that's available to all of your readers no matter what. What the difference is who is paying the money, the timeline, and control. So really think about those factors. Do you have the budget to invest upfront in a hybrid pathway or in self-publishing? Those are really viable and wonderful, and I would say even the most popular and beneficial to the widest amount of authors. That's how you're going to your goal is to get your books into the hands of readers. If you pay enough money, you can get a billboard in Times Square. You can get a pile of books in placement in a Barnes & Noble. That's about money. So really just think about, what do I want my book to do? How do I want to feel about it? And is it that there's some logo on the spine that most readers are never going to look at? They don't know what the imprint is. Or that it's a book you're incredibly proud of, and that one reader writes to you and says, this changed my life, this changed my perspective, I learned so much, thank you. Does it help you in your work? Is it your calling card? Is it, emblematic of your leadership or of something greater in the world that you want to do? Just really, whatever that goal is, support that goal, focus on that goal, and then everything else, align it to that, and I think you'll be golden.
That's wonderful advice. It was unexpected. I wasn't expecting that, but that was perfect and beautiful. Okay, I'm going to ask you a very hard question. This is the question that I ask all of my guests, but it's especially hard because you're a publisher and book lover. What if you could recommend one book to listeners and viewers? This is one that has profoundly impacted your life.
Yes.
What would it be and why?
This is such a hard question.
I know.
And I know
sorry.
every single person you ask is like, that's such a hard question.
But it's harder for you, I think, than for most because
I know, and I love so many different types of books. And I was thinking, should it be Where the Red Fern Grows? Because I have 3 hound dogs, and it has had a profound impact on my life. I married my husband because we bonded over Song of Solomon. I was like, an incredible book. But in the end, I decided on To Kill a Mockingbird. One of my sons is named Atticus after Atticus Finch. But there's one, I think, because this entire conversation has been really about values and integrity, there is a moment in To Kill a Mockingbird that has always stuck with me. And it's when Scout, the little girl, is talking to Miss Maudie, her neighbor, and they're having a conversation about how Atticus Finch, Scout's father, doesn't treat his children any differently in the house than he does in the yard. And Miss Maudie says of Atticus, he is the same in his house as he is on the public streets. And to me,
I love that.
I mean, that's it, right? I mean, to me, that is such a guiding principle. Live your life, including with your clients, authentically and with integrity. And if you are always the same and everything you're saying to everyone has that ring of truth and transparency, and in service to others, then it's all going to turn out okay. And so to me, it's a beautiful principle and one I really try to live up to.
I love that. Thank you, Liam. Thank you for sharing. And thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time and you sharing all of your wisdom with our listeners and our viewers.
Well, likewise, you're incredible. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast, which I love so much.
And thank you to you, our listeners and viewers, for hanging out with us today. If you are still listening or watching, you must have really enjoyed this. So be sure that you are subscribed. And if you have a moment to rate and review the podcast or leave a comment on YouTube, I would really appreciate it. Not only will it help you get more of these great interviews, but it will also help me reach more people with the message of living a life that's not just better, but beyond better. And I always have to thank Rita Dominguez because, as I say every week, if she was not part of this would never make it to your ears or your eyes. She is the reason that this podcast happens, and I am grateful. And I will be back with you before you know it.